Hello, everyone. Nice to see you all. Welcome to session 4 of our Sutta study course, the transition years. Today, we will continue reading the Mahāparinibbāna Sutta, and we will finish the Mahāparinibbāna Sutta today. But before we start, I will chant the Namo Tassa as usual. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Buddhang Dhammang Sanghang Namasami. So, welcome. I see a few people have joined. Hello, Gita. Nice to see you. And welcome to Jayanta, to Kumu, to Mike, Aum, and Charles Lee. Nice to see you all. So today we will continue reading the Mahāparinibbāna Sutta. There is a link in the description box. And I will be reading from Bhante Sujato's translation. We will continue reading at chapter 26, the pair of sal trees. So, then the Buddha said to Ananda, "Come, Ananda, let's go to the far shore of the Golden River and on to the sal forest of the Mallas at Upavatana near Kusinada." "Yes, sir," Ananda replied. And that's where they went. Then the Buddha addressed Ananda. "Please, Ananda, set up a cot for me between the twin sal trees, with my head to the north. I'm tired and will lay down." "Yes, sir," replied Ananda, and did as he was asked. And then the Buddha lay down in the lion's posture, on the right side, placing one foot on top of the other, mindful and aware. Now at that time, the twin sal trees were in full blossom with flowers out of season. They sprinkled and bestrewed the realized one's body in honor of the realized one, and the flowers of the heavenly flame tree fell from the sky, and they too sprinkled and bestrewed the realized one's body in honor of the realized one. And heavenly sandalwood powder fell from the sky, and it too sprinkled and bestrewed the realized one's body in honor of the realized one. And heavenly music played in the sky in honor of the realized one, and heavenly choirs sang in the sky in honor of the realized one. Then the Buddha pointed out to Ananda what was happening, adding, "That's not how the realized one is honored, respected, revered, venerated, and esteemed. Any monk or nun, or male or female lay follower, who practices in line with the teachings, practicing properly, living in line with the teachings, they honor, respect, revere, venerate, and esteem the realized one with the highest honor. So, Ananda, you should train like this. We shall practice in line with the teachings, practicing properly, living in line with the teachings." So in this chapter, we see that the Buddha has arrived at his final destination. He's lying down under the sal trees, where he's also going to pass away a little while later. And all the gods take this occasion to pay final homage to the Buddha by sprinkling him with all kinds of heavenly flowers and powders and displaying heavenly music and all kinds of supernatural things happen. And of course, the Buddha is not impressed by that at all. And he says it's much better if we actually practice his teaching instead of displaying all these outward signs of homage, like offering flowers and playing heavenly music. And I personally think that's a very beautiful passage. And also, like personally, because I live in a traditional Buddhist country. I live in Sri Lanka, And as a convert Buddhist who didn't grow up in a Buddhist culture, it's very difficult for me to connect with all the rituals that are done here, all the pujas. And it's very common here to offer flowers to the Buddha. It's very common to offer various scents like fragrant oils and incense and other kinds of things, and doing pujas and doing chantings and so on. And it's very, very difficult for me to connect with that. And because of that, and because it's so common here in the culture, and because it's really important to people here, and people feel very uplifted when they do that, it's often the case that they think that we as convert Buddhists, we don't really have a connection to the Buddha, and we don't really practice properly. Like, we don't venerate the Buddha properly. We don't have the proper respect for the Buddha. But actually, when we read this passage here, then the Buddha says, well, if you practice in line with my teaching, then that is the proper way of paying respect to the Buddha. So I feel like sometimes we worry, like, is it really that we don't have this heart-to-heart connection to the Buddha that the people in traditional Buddhist cultures seem to have? But when we read this text, then the Buddha says, well, you don't have to worry. Your way of practicing is fine. And actually, the Buddha really appreciates if people follow his teachings and do actually keep sila and meditate and so on, instead of just performing these pujas. So to me, this is a passage that really touches me very deeply, and I think it's something that can be an inspiration, especially to convert Buddhists who don't connect with the traditional rituals for the veneration of the Buddha. So we're now going to skip the next few chapters. So, and we are going to continue reading at chapter 31, Ananda's incredible qualities. Then Venerable Ananda entered a dwelling and stood there leaning against the door jamb and crying, "Oh, I'm still only a trainee with work left to do, and my teacher is about to become fully extinguished, he who is so kind to me." Then the Buddha said to the mendicants, "Mendicants, where is Ananda?" "Sir, Ananda has entered the dwelling and stands there leaning against the door jamb and crying, 'Oh, I'm still only a trainee with work left to do, and my teacher is about to become fully extinguished, he who is so kind to me.'" So the Buddha said to a certain monk, "Please, monk, in my name tell Ananda that the teacher summons him." "Yes, sir," that monk replied. He went to Ananda and said to him, "Reverend Ananda, the teacher summons you." "Yes, Reverend," Ananda replied. He went to the Buddha, bowed, and sat down to one side. The Buddha said to him, "Enough, Ananda, do not grieve, do not lament. Did I not prepare for this when I explained that we must be parted and separated from all we hold dear and beloved? How could it possibly be so that what is born, created, conditioned, and liable to fall apart should not fall apart, even the realized one's body? For a long time, Ananda, you've treated the realized one with deeds of body, speech, and mind that are loving, beneficial, pleasant, wholehearted, and limitless. You have done good deeds, Ananda. Devote yourself to meditation, and you will soon be free of defilements." Then the Buddha said to the mendicants, "The Buddhas of the past or the future have attendants who are no better than Ananda is for me. Ananda is astute, he is intelligent, he knows the time for monks, nuns, laymen, laywomen, kings, ministers, religious founders, and the disciples of religious founders to visit the realized one." So here we see that Ananda is very distraught because the Buddha is about to pass away. And then the Buddha calls him and gives him a Dhamma teaching and reminds him again of impermanence, and reminds him of all the good karma that he has made over the many years that he was the attendant of the Buddha. And he encourages him to keep on practicing, and he promises him that he will attain arahantship very soon. So we see that even in the last hours, when the Buddha was already very old and very weak, he was still full of compassion, and he was still looking after the sangha, and trying to use every opportunity to give teachings, especially to the people who had looked after him for such a long time, such as Ananda here. And he also says that, the Buddhas of the future and the past, like nobody could have had a better attendant than Ananda was for the Buddha. Even the Buddhas of the future and the past will have attendants that are equally capable as Ananda, but they couldn't have attendants who are better than Ananda. So, and the Buddha continues, there are these 4 incredible and amazing things about Ananda. What for? If an assembly of monks goes to see Ananda, they are uplifted by seeing him and uplifted by hearing him speak. And when he falls silent, they've never had enough. If an assembly of nuns goes to see Ananda, they are uplifted by seeing him and uplifted by hearing him speak. And when he falls silent, they've never had enough. And the same for the laymen and the laywomen. These are the 4 incredible and amazing things about Ananda. There are these 4 incredible and amazing things about a wheel-turning monarch. What for? If an assembly of aristocrats, an assembly of Brahmins, an assembly of householders, or an assembly of ascetics goes to see a wheel-turning monarch, they are uplifted by seeing him and uplifted by hearing him speak. And when he falls silent, they've never had enough. In the same way, there are those 4 incredible and amazing things about Ananda. So here we hear the Buddha really praising Ananda and even comparing him with a wheel-turning monarch. So in this passage here, obviously, Ananda is raised up and very much praised by the Buddha. And last time we read a passage where the Buddha dropped all those hints about him being able to live on for an eon, and Ananda obviously being a little bit confused and not asking the Buddha to stay on for the eon. So last time we talked about that passage, and I said that that passage was probably included to undermine Ananda's authority a little bit, because after the Buddha's parinibbāna, as we will see, there were different groups in the sangha, and they were sort of struggling with each other a little bit to determine the future course of Buddhism and the future direction that the sangha should take. So one of the groups was sort of clustered around Mahākassapa, and another group was around Ananda. So it seems that that passage last time could be included possibly to undermine Ananda's authority a little bit and to elevate the status of Mahākassapa. But here we have a passage that seems where the Buddha really seems to endorse Ananda and really seems to praise him. So this is maybe a passage to counterbalance that, and to again raise the status of Ananda. So we see the Mahāparinibbāna is really a composite sutta with many different parts that were kind of put together, possibly at different points in time by different groups of people. So this is a sutta that was added to over time. So until it became this really large, long sutta that we have nowadays. And now we are going to skip 2 more chapters, and we continue at chapter 34 on Subhadda the Wanderer. Now at that time, a wanderer named Subhadda was residing near Kusinara. He heard that on that very day, in the last watch of the night, the ascetic Gotama would become fully extinguished. He thought, I have heard that Brahmins of the past, who were elderly and senior, the teachers of teachers, said, only rarely do realized ones arise in the world, perfected ones, fully awakened Buddhas. And this very day, in the last watch of the night, the ascetic Gotama will become fully extinguished. This state of uncertainty has come up in me. I'm quite confident that the Buddha is capable of teaching me so that I can give up this state of uncertainty. Then Subhadda went to the mullein sal grove at Upavattana, approached Ananda and said to him, Master Ananda, I have heard that Brahmins of the past, who were elderly and senior, the teachers of teachers, said, Only rarely do realized ones arise in the world, perfected ones, fully awakened Buddhas. And this very day, in the last watch of the night, the ascetic Gautama will become fully extinguished. This state of uncertainty has come up in me. I am quite confident that the Buddha is capable of teaching me so that I can give up this state of uncertainty. Master Ananda, please let me see the ascetic Gautama. When he had spoken, Ananda said, Enough, Reverend Subhadda, do not trouble the realized one. He is tired. For a second time and a third time, Subhadda asked Ananda, and the third time Ananda refused. The Buddha heard that discussion between Ananda and Subhadda. He said to Ananda, Enough, Ananda, don't obstruct Subhadda. Let him see the realized one. For whatever he asks me, he will only be looking for understanding, not trouble. And he will quickly understand any answer I give to his question. So here we have a wanderer, a non-Buddhist renunciate, who is experiencing some kind of, like it said, a state of uncertainty. So he has some kind of spiritual question that he's unable to resolve. But he's internally confident that the Buddha would be able to resolve the question for him. So in other suttas, we know that having confidence in the teacher is a very important prerequisite to actually be able to understand the Dhamma and to be able to practice. So it seems that Subhadda had good conditions, and he intends to see the Buddha, but Ananda doesn't want to let him because, the final hours of the Buddha have arrived, and he doesn't want to disturb him at this point because it's obviously better if he can pass away in peace. But we again see how the Buddha is very compassionate, and he lets Subhadda come anyway, even though he's tired and he's very old and exhausted. And because the Buddha already knows that Subhadda is not there to make trouble, he's not there to debate or to win in a debate. He's really a genuine spiritual seeker, and he will be able to understand the teaching of the Buddha. So for that reason, the Buddha lets him come. And so Ananda said to the wanderer Subhadda, Go, Reverend Subhadda, the Buddha is taking the time for you. Then the wanderer Subhadda went up to the Buddha and exchanged greetings with him. When the greetings and polite conversation were over, he sat down to one side and said to the Buddha, Master Gautama, there are those ascetics and Brahmins who lead an order and a community and teach a community. They are well-known and famous religious founders regarded as holy by many people, namely Purana Kassapa, Makkhali Gosala, Nigantanatha Buddha, Sanjaya Belati Buddha, Pakuda Kachayana, and Ajita Kesa Kambala. According to their own claims, did all of them have direct knowledge, or none of them, or only some? So even though the Buddha just said that Subhadda will be able to understand the Dhamma, Subhadda isn't actually asking a question about the Dhamma. He's just asking a random question about the teachings of other people. And of course, the Buddha says, Enough, Subhadda, let that be. I shall teach you the Dhamma. Listen and pay close attention, I will speak. Yes, sir, Subhadda replied. The Buddha said this, Subhadda, in whatever teaching and training, the Noble Eightfold Path is not found. There's no true ascetic found, no second ascetic, no third ascetic, and no fourth ascetic. In whatever teaching and training, the Noble Eightfold Path is found. There is a true ascetic found, a second ascetic, a third ascetic, and a fourth ascetic. In this teaching and training, the Noble Eightfold Path is found. Only here is there a true ascetic, here a second ascetic, here a third ascetic, and here a fourth ascetic. Other sects are empty of ascetics. So this is obviously an abbreviated version of the teaching that the Buddha must have given to Subhadda, because Subhadda is not a Buddhist at this point, so Subhadda wouldn't have known what the Noble Eightfold Path is and what the true ascetic metaphor refers to. So I'm assuming the Buddha would have gone in more detail and would have explained all the factors of the Noble Eightfold Path and explained the metaphor of the four ascetics. And The metaphor of the four ascetics actually is explained in more detail in a sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya, in the Book of Force, Sutta number 241, the Samana Sutta, so the Sutta on ascetics, Samana. And so the four ascetics refer to the four stages of enlightenment: the stream entry, once return, non-return, and arahantship. And of course, only if you practice the Noble Eightfold Path can you attain these four stages. And we see that the Buddha, in a way, like skillfully refers to Subhada's question a little bit, because Subhada asks about the teachings of other teachers. And so the Buddha, without criticizing the other teachers, just says in any teaching that has the Noble Eightfold Path, there will be true ascetics, and they will then have direct knowledge. And any teaching that doesn't have the Noble Eightfold Path wouldn't have people who have direct knowledge. So without criticizing the other founders, he's just teaching the Dhamma here. And then the Buddha continues to say, were these mendicants to practice well, the world would not be empty of perfected ones. I was 29 years of age, Subhada, when I went forth to discover what is skillful. It's been over 50 years since I went forth. I am the one who points out the proper teaching. Outside of here, there is no true ascetic. Were these mendicants to practice well, the world would not be empty of perfected ones. When he had spoken, Subhada said to the Buddha, excellent, sir, excellent, as if he were righting the overturned, or revealing the hidden, or pointing out the path to the lost, or lighting a lamp in the dark so people with good eyes can see what's there. The Buddha has made the teaching clear in many ways. I go for refuge to the Buddha, to the teaching, and to the mendicant sangha. Sir, may I receive the going forth, the ordination in the Buddha's presence. So we see that Subhada has deeply understood the teaching and now wants to take ordination as a Buddhist monk. And the Buddha says, Subhada, if someone formally ordained in another sect wishes to take the going forth, the ordination in this teaching and training, they must spend 4 months on probation. When 4 months have passed, if the mendicants are satisfied, they'll give the going forth, the ordination into monkhood. However, I have recognized individual differences in this matter. So the Buddha says that since Subhada is not a lay person who wants to ordain, Subhada is somebody who previously followed another teacher and was ordained in another religious movement or ascetic movement. He has to spend 4 months on probation to make sure that he has he genuinely wants to convert to Buddhism, so that he wouldn't change his mind after a few days and want to go back to his old teacher. Or it also sometimes happened that people just wanted to join the sangha to make trouble, or that they were actually sent by other teachers to join the sangha for a reason other than just practicing the Dhamma. So and also because when you are a monk or a nun, then lay people look up to you and they expect you to be able to teach. So of course, the Buddha here wants to make sure that a person is actually capable of teaching the Dhamma and wouldn't actually or accidentally teach the teaching of their former teacher. For that reason, there is a 4-month period basically of onboarding for the new Sangha member. And if after 4 months, the bhikkhus or bhikkhunis feel that they are qualified, then they get the ordination. So this is something that is still in the Vinaya and would still be applicable today if, for example, a Catholic monk wanted to join or a Jain monk wanted to join, then they would have to be on probation for 4 months. And Subhada says, sir, if 4 months probation are required in such a case, I will spend 4 years on probation. When 4 years have passed, if the mendicants are satisfied, let them give me the going forth, the ordination into monkhood. So Subhada is so convinced of the Buddha's teaching that he is willing to spend whatever time is necessary, even 4 years, to get the ordination. And then the Buddha says to Ananda, well then Ananda, give Subhada the going forth. Yes, sir, Ananda replied. So as the Buddha has said, he sometimes recognizes individual differences. So because the Buddha is able to read the mind of other people, he can check if they're ready. He can check if they are genuinely wanting to join the sangha, or if they have some other ulterior motive, and if they have understood the dhamma properly. And in that case, they can join right away. So there are a few exceptions in the suttas of people who get to join right away. And now the Buddha makes an exception here for Subhadra also. So Subhadra gets ordained right away. And then Subhadra says to Ananda, "You're so fortunate, Reverend Ananda, so very fortunate to be anointed here in the teacher's presence as his pupil." So this is a little bit a weird expression, of course, anointed in the teacher's presence as the pupil. And the Pali word here is abhiseka. And abhiseka is the word that is used for, well, we would say the coronation of a king in the West. But of course, in that time, kings didn't wear crowns, so you can't say a coronation. So it was basically the inauguration of a king or the consecration of a king. And at that time, in the Buddha's time, they did that by carrying out a ritual of sprinkling like fragrant substances on the head of the king. So they anointed the head of the king with those fragrances, and by this head anointing, it was shown that they were like properly installed as the valid king. So in the same way, so Subhadra here compares the possibility to join the sangha with the opportunity of somebody to become a king. So he shows how much he values the opportunity to join the sangha here. And then the wanderer Subhadra received the going forth, the ordination in the Buddha's presence. Not long after his ordination, Venerable Subhadra, living alone, withdrawn, diligent, keen, and resolute, soon realized the supreme end of the spiritual path in this very life. He lived having achieved, with his own insight, the goal for which gentlemen rightly go forth from the lay life into homelessness. He understood, rebirth is ended, the spiritual journey has been completed, what had to be done has been done, there is no return to any state of existence. And Venerable Subhadra became one of the perfected. He was the last personal disciple of the Buddha. So he attained arahantship. And yeah, this is the famous story, of course, of the last disciple of the Buddha. Then the Buddha addressed Venerable Ananda. Now, Ananda, some of you might think, the teacher's dispensation has passed. Now we have no teacher. But you should not see it like this. The teaching and training that I have taught and pointed out for you shall be your teacher after my passing. So again, we see what we have seen many times before. The Buddha does not appoint a next teacher or a next leader of the Sangha to take over from him. And again, he stresses that the Dhamma and the Vinaya should be the teacher after his passing. And of course, that was relevant for the early Sangha, but it is still relevant for all of us today, since there's still no new Buddha around. So we only have the teaching and the training. And then the Buddha makes a few last comments about small things that need to be addressed before he passes away. So the first one is that after my passing, mendicants ought not address each other as reverend as they do today. A more senior mendicant ought to address a more junior mendicant by name or clan, or by saying reverend. A more junior mendicant ought to address a more senior mendicant using sir or venerable. So we know that at the Buddha's time, all the monks and nuns in the Sangha addressed each other as avuso. So reverend, the Pali word is avuso. And they only addressed the Buddha as Bhante. And so among the monks or among the nuns, there wasn't really a hierarchy, or there wasn't an obvious hierarchy, like everybody just addressed each other as reverend avuso. But now, after the Buddha has passed, the Buddha says that People should address each other according to seniority. So if somebody is more senior, you should say sir or venerable. In Pali, that is Bante or Ayasma. And if somebody is more junior, you should say Abuso, or you should just say their name. And this is what actually happens in the Sangha today, mostly, but only in the monks' Sangha, interestingly. So in the nuns' Sangha, when we look at our Patimokkha text and our Vinaya text and so on, we see that that this instruction of the Buddha only applied to the monks, and the nuns still address each other as Aya. So no matter if you're senior or junior or even the novices, the samaneris, everybody is still addressed as Aya. So in the Bhikkhuni Sangha, we have apparently kept this earlier way of doing things, where everybody is just addressed in the same way, irrespective of the hierarchy. So that's just an interesting side point. And then the Buddha also says, if it wishes, after my passing, the Sangha may abolish the lesser and minor training rules. So this is very interesting and has led to a lot of confusion, and is still discussed a lot nowadays, and has been discussed a lot throughout the ages, throughout the centuries and millennia. Because as we've seen before, the Buddha many times says that we shouldn't introduce new rules, but we also shouldn't abolish the old rules, but we should practice according to the rules that are laid down. And also he says we should take the Dhamma and the Vinaya as our teacher. So if the Vinaya rules are our teacher, it's kind of difficult to abolish them. But here the Buddha allows now that the minor training rules can be abolished. So there has been a lot of discussion throughout the ages what this refers to. And yeah, most bhikkhus and bhikkhunis are of the opinion it's better not to abolish the rules. So this was discussed a lot. It was also discussed at the first council, and we are going to read the story of the first council in 2 weeks, and then this will come up again. And the Buddha continues, after my passing, give the prime punishment to the mendicant Channa. But sir, what is the prime punishment? Channa might say what he likes, but the mendicants should not advise or instruct him. So Channa obviously is the former charioteer of the Buddha when the Buddha was a layperson. So Channa knew the Buddha for a long time, even when the Buddha was a child. And because of that, Channa joined the Sangha. He became a bhikkhu, but he was very arrogant, according to the story. And he didn't practice properly, and he didn't allow others to advise or instruct him. And whenever other Sangha members tried to correct him, he would be very rude and very arrogant, and we would say, well, I'm so close to the Buddha, so who are you to tell me anything? So he created a lot of problems in the Sangha. And so the Buddha imposed the most severe, the prime punishment on Channa. And to understand why not advising or instructing him is the most severe punishment, we have to refer to another sutta which explains this in more detail, which was probably known to the mendicants at that time. So that's why the Buddha didn't have to go into detail here. And the sutta that I'm thinking of is also in the Anguttara Nikaya, in the book of Force, Sutta 111, and it's called the Kesi Sutta, after Kesi, the horse trainer. So in that sutta, in the Anguttara Nikaya, Kesi, the horse trainer, comes to the Buddha, and the Buddha asks him, when you train a horse, with what kind of method do you train that horse? And Kesi says, well, some horses have a character that is such that I can train them with a gentle method. And some other horses I have to train with a harsh method. And some horses I have to train with a gentle and a harsh method. And then the Buddha says, well, what if there is a horse that doesn't submit to any of your methods? What do you do then? And then Kesi says, well, if the horse doesn't submit to me by any method, then I kill the horse, so that the horse wouldn't corrupt the other horses, and also so that there wouldn't be any embarrassment for me and for my teachers and my guild. And then Kesi asked the Buddha, well, how do you train your mendicants? And the Buddha says, Well, some of them I can train with a gentle method, and some of them I can train with a harsh method, and some of them I can train with a gentle and harsh method. And then Casey says, what happens if somebody doesn't submit to your teaching by any of your methods? And then the Buddha says, well, if they don't submit, then I kill them. And Casey says, what? It's not allowed for you to kill people. And the Buddha says, well, this is a metaphor, and it means that I don't advise or instruct them. And also all of the other mendicants or the teachers wouldn't advise or instruct them. And because if you are not advised or instructed, you cannot make any progress in my Dhamma. That's as though you were killed. Like that's basically as bad as if you were dead. Or actually, like realistically, it's actually even worse than if you were just to die, because this opportunity to practice the Dhamma may not come again for many, many lifetimes, but death comes again every lifetime. So actually not being obstructed from practicing the Dhamma is actually worse than dying. But so here the Buddha says, imposes that kind of punishment on Channa and says that nobody is to talk to him. So basically all the bhikkhus and bhikkhunis are supposed to ghost him and just ignore his presence. And again, that story also comes up again when we read about the first council, so we know what's going to happen with Channa. And then the Buddha said to the mendicants, perhaps even a single mendicant has doubt or uncertainty regarding the Buddha, the teaching, the sangha, the path, or the practice. So ask mendicants, don't regret it later thinking, we were in the teacher's presence and we weren't able to ask the Buddha a question. When this was said, the mendicants kept silent. For a second time and a third time, the Buddha addressed the mendicants. Perhaps even a single mendicant has doubt or uncertainty regarding the Buddha, the teaching, the sangha, the path, or the practice. So ask mendicants, don't regret it later, thinking, we were in the teacher's presence and we weren't able to ask the Buddha a question. For a third time, the mendicants kept silent. Then the Buddha said to the mendicants, mendicants, perhaps you don't ask out of respect for the teacher. So let a friend tell a friend. So the Buddha says, maybe you are too shy to ask me because you have so much respect for me. So then just whisper it to your friend and then let your friend ask on behalf of you. But when this was said, the mendicants kept silent. Then Venerable Ananda said to the Buddha, it's incredible, sir, it's amazing. I'm quite confident that there's not even a single mendicant in this sangha who has doubt or uncertainty regarding the Buddha, the teaching, the sangha, the path, or the practice. Ananda, you speak from faith, but the realized one knows that there's not even a single mendicant in this sangha who has doubt or uncertainty regarding the Buddha, the teaching, the sangha, the path, or the practice. Even the last of these 500 mendicants is a stream enterer, not liable to be reborn in the underworld, bound for awakening. Then the Buddha said to the mendicants, come now, mendicants, I say to you all, conditions fall apart, persist with diligence. These were the realized one's last words. So this passage here, the last words, Vaya Dhamma Sankhara Apamadena Sampadeta. We have already seen them last time in the part that we read last week. Sorry. And here we see them again. And of course, I said last time already, this is the shortest possible summary of the Buddha's teaching. Conditions fall apart refers to the three characteristics, anicca, dukkha, anatta, so impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and non-self. And persist with diligence is the injunction to keep on practicing and to keep on following the path. And as long as we don't give up, and as long as we walk in the right direction, we are bound to arrive at the goal sooner or later. So then the Buddha entered the first absorption. Emerging from that, he entered the second absorption. Emerging from that, he successively entered into and emerged from the third absorption, the fourth absorption, the dimension of infinite space, the dimension of infinite consciousness, the dimension of nothingness, and the dimension of neither perception nor non-perception. Then he entered the cessation of perception and feeling. Then Venerable Ananda said to Venerable Anuruddha, Venerable Anuruddha, has the Buddha become fully extinguished? No, Reverend Ananda. He has entered the cessation of perception and feeling. So here now suddenly, Venerable Anuruddha shows up, or is mentioned, who wasn't mentioned at all throughout the entire Mahāparinibbāna Sutta so far, even though he is one of the chief disciples of the Buddha. But it seems that he was there the whole time. And we know that Anuruddha, of course, is an arahant, whereas Ananda is just a stream enterer. And Anuruddha also is a master of the divine eye. He is the foremost of the monks among those with the divine eye. So he can see devas and he can talk to devas. And he also, that implies also that he has very deep concentration states. So he can see that the Buddha hasn't become fully extinguished yet, and explains that to Ananda, who is a stream enterer and can obviously, it seems, not distinguish the cessation of perception and feeling from parinibbana. And then the Buddha emerged from the cessation of perception and feeling and entered the dimension of neither perception nor non-perception. Emerging from that, he successively entered into and emerged from the dimension of nothingness, the dimension of infinite consciousness, the dimension of infinite space, the fourth absorption, the third absorption, the second absorption, and the first absorption. Emerging from that, he successively entered into and emerged from the second absorption and the third absorption. Then he entered the fourth absorption. Emerging from that, the Buddha immediately became fully extinguished. So the Buddha goes through all the samadhi attainments up to the cessation of perception and feeling. Then he goes down through all the samadhi attainments. Then he goes up again to the fourth jhana, and then he becomes fully extinguished. And when the Buddha became fully extinguished, along with the full extinguishment, there was a great earthquake, awe-inspiring and hair-raising, and thunder cracked the sky. When the Buddha became fully extinguished, Brahma Sahampati recited this verse. All creatures in this world must lay down this bag of bones, for even a teacher such as this, unrivaled in the world, the realized one attained to power, the Buddha became fully extinguished. When the Buddha became fully extinguished, Saka, Lord of Gods, recited this verse. Oh, conditions are impermanent. Their nature is to rise and fall. Having arisen, they cease. Their stilling is true bliss. When the Buddha became fully extinguished, Venerable Anuruddha recited this verse. There was no more breathing for the poised one of steady heart, imperturbable, committed to peace. The sage has done his time. He put up with painful feelings without flinching. The liberation of his heart was like the extinguishing of a lamp. When the Buddha became fully extinguished, Venerable Ananda recited this verse. Then there was terror. Then they had goosebumps. When the Buddha, endowed with all fine qualities, became fully extinguished. So we see here all these beings reciting a verse for the Buddha's parinibbana, and the first three are reciting verses that contain profound Dhamma teachings. And Ananda, of course, being very distraught here at this point, he recites a verse that expresses his emotions and his feeling of loss. And when the Buddha became fully extinguished, some of the mendicants there, with arms raised, falling down like their feet were chopped off, rolling back and forth, lamented. Too soon the Blessed One has become fully extinguished. Too soon the Holy One has become fully extinguished. Too soon the seer has vanished from the world. But the mendicants who were free of desire endured mindful and aware, thinking, conditions are impermanent. How could it possibly be otherwise? Then Anuruddha addressed the mendicants, enough reverence, do not grieve or lament. Did the Buddha not prepare us for this when he explained that we must be parted and separated from all we hold dear and beloved? How could it possibly be so that what is born, created, conditioned, and liable to fall apart should not fall apart? The deities are complaining. So here we see that suddenly Anuruddha is taking charge of the sangha, which is something we haven't seen before. And I will talk about Anuruddha a little bit more in a little while. But it's very likely that Anuruddha here is taking charge because Ananda is so distraught. So normally one would think that Ananda should be the one who is addressing the mendicants here, but because Ananda is obviously overcome by his emotions, very likely that is the reason why Anuruddha steps up and takes on some kind of leadership role or some kind of guiding role here. And of course, he can see the deities, so he can say the deities are complaining. But sir, what kind of deities are you thinking of? There are Ananda deities, both in the sky and on earth, who are percipient of the earth. So that means they can see what's going on here on the earth. With hair disheveled and arms raised, they fall down like their feet were chopped off, rolling back and forth, lamenting. Too soon the Blessed One has become fully extinguished. Too soon the Holy One has become fully extinguished. Too soon the seer has vanished from the world. But the deities who are free of desire endure mindful and aware, thinking, conditions are impermanent. How could it possibly be otherwise? Ananda and Anuruddha spent the rest of the night talking about Dhamma. So we see here that at least Ananda and Anuruddha now take this opportunity, this very unique event and very unique opportunity, this very unique lesson in impermanence, and talk about Dhamma and contemplate this, so they may at least make good use of this opportunity to further the Dhamma, their own Dhamma practice. And then now we are going to skip the rest of this chapter and the next chapter, because this is just how the people make preparations for the cremation of the Buddha's corpse. And we are going to continue reading at chapter 38, Mahākassapa's arrival. Now at that time, Venerable Mahākassapa was traveling along the road from Pava to Kusinara, together with a large sangha of around 500 mendicants. Then he left the road and sat at the root of a tree. Now at that time, a certain Ajivaka ascetic had picked up a flame tree flower in Kusinara and was traveling along the road to Pava. Mahākassapa saw him coming off in the distance and said to him, Reverend, might you know about our teacher? Yes, Reverend. 7 days ago, the ascetic Gautama became fully extinguished. From there, I picked up this flame tree flower. So Mahākassapa hears of the Buddha's passing only 7 days after that has happened. And then some of the mendicants there, with arms raised, falling down like their feet were chopped off, rolling back and forth, lamented, Too soon the Blessed One has become fully extinguished. Too soon the Holy One has become fully extinguished. Too soon the seer has vanished from the world. But the mendicants who were free of desire endured mindful and aware, thinking, conditions are impermanent. How could it possibly be otherwise? Now at that time a monk named Subhadda, who had gone forth when old, was sitting in that assembly. So this Subhadda is another Subhadda. It's not the Subhadda we encountered just now, who was the Buddha's last disciple, who became an arahant. So this is another person here. He said to those mendicants, Enough reverence, do not grieve or lament. We are well rid of that great ascetic harassing us. This is allowable for you, this is not allowable for you. Well, now we shall do what we want and not do what we don't want. So Subhadda is celebrating that the Buddha has passed on. And this passage also occurs in the story of the first council, and there we learn that this is actually what prompted Mahākassapa to convene the first council, because he was quite upset with this, and then he decided to collect the Dhamma and Vinaya to make sure that unscrupulous monks such as this one can't dilute or destroy the true Dhamma. But here in this case, the story takes another direction, and it continues as follows. Then Venerable Mahākassapa addressed the mendicants. Enough reverence, do not grieve or lament. Did the Buddha not prepare us for this when he explained that we must be parted and separated from all we hold dear and beloved? How could it possibly be so that what is born, created, conditioned, and liable to fall apart should not fall apart, even the realized one's body? So now at that time, in another location in Kusinara, 4 of the leading mallas, having bathed their heads and dressed in unworn clothes, said, "We shall light the Buddha's funeral pyre." But they were unable to do so. The Mallas said to Anuruddha, "What is the cause, Venerable Anuruddha? What is the reason why these 4 Malayan leaders are unable to light the Buddha's funeral pyre?" "Vasettas, the deities have a different plan." "But sir, what is the deities' plan?" "The deities' plan is this. Venerable Mahākassapa is traveling along the road from Pava to Kusinara together with a large sangha of around 500 mendicants. The Buddha's funeral pyre shall not burn until he bows with his head at the Buddha's feet. Sir, let it be as the deities plan." So here now they want to start the cremation of the Buddha, but the deities intervene and don't let the fire burn because they want to give Mahākassapa the chance to pay respect to the Buddha one last time. And we see again it's Anuruddha who is taking charge here. And also we see Anuruddha is addressing the Mallas as Vasettas. So Vasettas is their clan name, and they are named after an old sage of the same name. So it's a mythological personality who was greatly esteemed, like a very old sage. And he is supposed to be the forefather of the Mallas, of the Malla clan. So that they trace the lineage back to this Vaseta, and for that reason, they all have the same name, the same clan name, Vaseta. And the story continues. Then Venerable Mahākassapa came to the Malayan shrine named Makutta Bandhana at Kusinara and approached the Buddha's funeral pyre. Arranging his robe over one shoulder and raising his joined palms, he respectfully circled the Buddha 3 times, keeping him on his right, and bowed with his head to the Buddha's feet. And the 500 mendicants did likewise. And when Mahākassapa and the 500 mendicants bowed to the Buddha's funeral pyre, bowed to the Buddha, and when the 500 mendicants bowed, the Buddha's funeral pyre burst into flames all by itself. And when the Buddha's corpse was cremated, no ash, or I think this is pronounced sot, right? Sut, was found from outer or inner skin, flesh, sinews, or synovial fluid. Only the relics remained. It's like when ghee or oil blaze and burn, and neither ashes nor sot are found. In the same way, when the Buddha's corpse was cremated, no ash or sot was found from outer or inner skin, flesh, sinews, or synovial fluid. Only the relics remained. And of those 500 pairs of garments, only 2 were not burned, the innermost and the outermost. So we skipped the preparations they made for his cremation, and in the preparations, they wrapped the Buddha's body in 500 garments, and 498 of them burnt, and the innermost and the outermost were left intact. But when the Buddha's corpse was consumed, the funeral pyre was extinguished by a stream of water that appeared in the sky, by water dripping from the sal trees, and by the Malla's fragrant water. Then the Mallas made a cage of spears for the Buddha's relics in the meeting hall and surrounded it with a buttress of bows. A buttress of bows. For 7 days, they honored, respected, revered, and venerated them with dance and song and music and garlands and fragrances. So we see the Mallas did all the things that lay people liked to do for the cremation ceremony of a highly respected personality. And now also we see that after the Buddha's passing away, there were 3 of the senior mendicants that were still left in the Sangha. So a lot of the senior mendicants had already passed away before the Buddha. For example, Sariputta and Mahamoggallana had already passed. But Ananda, Mahākassapa, and Anuruddha were still there. And when we continue exploring the transition years in the next few weeks, we will encounter Mahākassapa and Ananda again and again. And so that those 2 did play a very significant role in shaping the future direction of the Sangha. But Anuruddha is not going to show up anymore again. So we wonder what happened to him. And I think the key to understanding what happens to Ananda is actually explained in another sutta, which is also from the Anguttara Nikaya, in the Book of Force, sutta number 243. And that is a sutta that takes place during the lifetime of the Buddha. And in that sutta, a pupil of Anuruddha is trying to create a schism in the sangha. And so the Buddha addresses Ananda and asks Ananda, so is that matter with that mendicant who is trying to create a schism, is that settled? Have you resolved that issue? And Ananda says, no, how could it be settled? This is Anuruddha's pupil, and Anuruddha doesn't even say one single word about it. And then the Buddha says, well, when has Anuruddha ever been involved in any kind of matters of the Sangha? So isn't it up to you and up to Sariputta and Mahamoggallana to resolve matters in the Sangha? And then Ananda goes and resolves that problem. So here we see that Anuruddha is a really, really very reclusive person and never gets involved in any kind of Sangha issues. So even when it's his own pupil, so when he clearly has a responsibility, and even when it's such a grave issue like a schism, like it couldn't be more serious than that, even then he doesn't get involved at all in Sangha matters. So I think for that reason, here in these last few pages, Anuruddha didn't have a choice. He had to step up because Ananda was distraught and nobody else was there. But the minute that Mahakassapa arrives, I think Anuruddha stepped back again and disappeared in the background as before. And in the future, in the next few suttas that we will read, he no longer plays any significant role. And it seems that he did not play a significant role to shape the future of the Sangha after the Buddha's passing. So I think, that is the reason. He was a very reclusive person. And we are going to end here for today. So the last two chapters that are still left are about distributing and venerating the relics of the Buddha. And we are not going to read them today. So I hope that you enjoyed reading the Mahāparinibbāna Sutta. And if you have any questions or comments, you can type them in the chat box now. And I see a few more people have joined. Welcome, Andrew. I'm sure I'm totally mispronouncing your name. And welcome to Tara, nice to see you. And to Maria. And I see it's pronounced suit, like boot and foot, okay. Boot and foot. But boot and foot are different, isn't it? I don't know. Okay, anyway, doesn't matter. And hello, Roy. Nice to see so many people joining. And I see that Gita has left a few comments or questions. So let me see that. Yes, very true, Aya. In Sri Lanka, they practice the rituals in their daily prayers. Offering fresh flowers, incense, water is very common. Yeah, of course. I've been here for a long time, Gita. I know all this stuff. I've lived in all those in Sri Lankan temples, Sri Lankan traditional temples for a long time. So at my cousin's home, every morning they also offer morning food dana. Yeah, it's a very natural practice. I know, and it does bring a lot of joy to people. And if it brings a lot of joy, then that's a very wholesome thing to do, because that as it brings piti, and if it brings peace, and if it cultivates these wholesome qualities, that's very, very useful, of course. And also it makes meditation practice much easier, because if you have piti and if you have peace, then it's easy to attain samadhi. But it's just that for some people that doesn't work, and they have alternative ways of practice, and I think those alternative practices are also valid. And there's no point criticizing each other, and there's no point pointing fingers at each other. And if those rituals don't work for some people, then it's really valid to practice in different ways. And it doesn't mean that they don't have a connection to the Buddha, or it doesn't mean that they don't pay respect to the Buddha. They just pay respect in a different way. And Gita also says, we are so grateful to be living in an age where there is the Mahasangha and the most profound Dhamma. Yes, thank you to all venerables. That's true. We are lucky it's still around. Tara says there are two different ways to pronounce Sut. So hopefully I got one of them right. And Charles Lee asks, with his head to the north, which direction was the Buddha facing? East or west? Yeah, I don't know. It's not mentioned in the suttas. So the Buddha was lying on his right side. So if his head is to the north, then he was facing west, I think. I guess. Yeah, should have been to the west. Yeah, but it's not mentioned in the sutta. But because he's lying in the lion's pose, and the lion's pose means that you lie on your right side, so from there we can probably deduce that he was facing west, the setting sun, which is fitting when you're passing away, I think. So if I'll just wait another few seconds if there's another question, and if not, we can end for today. And I see Amaranta is also here. Welcome to Amaranta. And I think we can end for today. There doesn't seem to be any more questions. So we will end with 3 sadhus as usual. Feel free to join me if you want. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And see you all next week.